Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. I'm Mark, and I'm here with Brent.
Hello, everybody.
And we're here to, well, what are we going to do, Brent? More bad news?
I want to talk about your new phone because
we can do that if you want.
A little bit now because you did some remote podcasts with guests, which the guests were pretty good, by the way. Usually when we have guests on,
what do you mean the guests were pretty good? What are you leaving unsaid?
I enjoy listening to guests talk.
Oh, okay.
So,
good.
yeah. No.
But not me. Fair. Fine.
Usually when they leave, I have more questions afterwards. So we're going to have to, next year, just pull them all back in.
We can we can revisit some of these for sure.
But yeah, you got a new phone, and I've never seen such a beastly phone.
I mean, I'll hold it up for our YouTube listeners.
It's hard to tell a scale because this is like the iPhone, and it's, I don't know. I can't even
three
tell
times
I'm
as
holding
thick.
it. But
It's pretty heavy. It's got a massive battery. It's a Chinese brand you've never heard of, and
that's
it's
on
awesome.
Character with you, Mark, because buying Chinese products.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's big and bulky like me.
Does it know you're recording this right now?
Does your iPhone? Come on.
Probably.
Talk about Chinese products.
It's designed in California. Oh, yeah.
No, I needed a new tough smartphone, and I didn't want to pay Bell their upcharge on a Samsung phone. I didn't want to pay that much for a Samsung rugged phone, so I found this phone. And it was pretty reasonably priced. I can drop it off a ladder.
And you said it has an endoscope attachment?
It does. It's got they have a couple of things you can add. So it's designed for work and stuff,
I had to look up what that was.
Night vision camera. Well, if you want to look in a wall, right. I mean, medically it's for other things, but
I was going to say.
It's not for medical use.
Mark's doing colonoscopies or something.
I mean, at the rate we're going with our healthcare system.
You got one of those in your back pocket. We're all safe.
Mark's backyard colonoscopies, $15. No, it's for if you need to look in a wall or something like that. Anyways, it's I don't know what it is, a 66,000 milliamp battery life, charge it once a week kind of thing. But yeah, you can drop it and get it wet and all that good stuff. So it's just kind of heavy. So
it's the kind of phone that you put in your pocket and your pants kind of drop a little bit.
Oh no, I got to make sure I'm wearing a belt or I'll be arrested for indecent exposure.
Oh man. All right. Well, way to kick off the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if we call these current events or just bad news podcasts, because it always seems like current events are just bad news.
Yeah, and they're current events because, I was kind of out of things for a week or two, and I just talked to you, and then I get my news, and I'm like, wait, what? And you're like, Trump was assassinated again. I'm like, what? And it's hard to take Mark seriously because, you come in and just say things, and you're like, yeah, whatever. Dad joke. I don't really trust that. Look at his phone. How can you believe this guy? And
unbelievable.
And we got Gideon's our fact checker. So he's like, no, that's real. Actually,
Gideon's just as surprised as you.
Yeah.
So lots of crazy stuff coming out of the States, but equally a lot of crazy stuff coming out of Canada.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really where we're focused on, right? So let's talk about Canada a little bit.
A lot of crazy stuff coming into Canada too, probably.
Yeah. Well, and but also leaving.
Okay.
So I think this year was the first time there's more Indian. So people from the country of India, not
First
Aboriginal, First Nations. And anyways, more Indian illegal immigrants going into the States via Canada than via Mexico.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So all these students we've been talking about, they've had it, and they're just going to the States because they're like, it wasn't. It was 5,000 or something. Yeah. Not a massive number, but it's still kind of telling, right? That that's what's happening. And I mean, even the sentiment kind of word on the street is that the sort of Canadian dream for Indians is over, and they're kind of catching on in India as well.
Got to get out of here.
Universities are already starting to cry about downfall and some of the changes that the government is talking about, right? Because how are we supposed to fund our our programs and all this stuff because of this massive drop in international students? And it's I feel so bad for you.
Yeah.
Right? Conestoga College is almost $1 billion institution by revenue. Conestoga College.
And what did they produce?
Fake diplomas.
Oh, okay. I was going to say like education, because you can get a lot of education online for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's we've talked about it ad nauseum, right?
Yeah.
Just basically diploma mills. But I mean, that just tells you something, right? Close to $1 billion. It's ridiculous. It's not for like something that has a lot of strip mall.
Okay, so just to clarify, like there was an apparent assassination attempt. Another one, huh?
On Donald Trump,
Okay,
yes.
So I'm not losing it. Okay.
No.
So we can go over that. Okay, there was one of those. And you mentioned something about a whistleblower on the U.S. debate, which I also hadn't heard about. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, just someone who will testify that the debate was rigged.
Okay.
In favor of the Harris camp.
So there's probably going to be somebody that's testifying in the other way too.
Well, this is a signed affidavit, so I don't know.
Wow.
But,
okay.
that doesn't really affect the price of houses in Canada, does it?
No.
It might, depending on who gets elected.
I just wanted to ask you to make sure, because you mentioned that. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's all true. It's all true. Okay, so Jackpot Generation, you were talking about them. What is a Jackpot Generation, Brent?
Wouldn't you want to?
How do I get into it?
I don't know. Too late for you, Mark. So this is an article from Maclean's, and Mark puts a lot of weight in Maclean's.
I put 0 weight.
Okay, but I ended up reading the whole article. Sorry, Mark. But no, so the Jackpot Generation, and we've been talking about the wealth transfer that's going to happen from Boomer generation to their children.
Yeah.
And I guess you can speculate whether or not that's going to happen when these folks pass away, or whether that's going to be like a gift while they're alive, so to speak. So this article kind of goes through. It's quite long, actually. So I pat myself on the back for reading the whole thing. And you're probably like, you read the whole thing?
Do you feel dumber now?
But it is, they're saying, I guess in Canada, it's the greatest wealth transfer of all time, right? So it's going to be about $1 trillion passing between generations. And the first thing that pops in my head is like, okay, well, how can the government get their fair shake out of this, right? Like if wealth is going to be forced out of one group's hands and given to the other group, it's obviously got to go through this process where the government has the opportunity to just step in and be like, whoop, take some of that.
Okay, where does it say the nature of this wealth? Like, what is it?
So
is it stocks? Is it real estate? Is it what?
Just hard-earned Canadian dollars in bank accounts. No, it's mostly yeah. Oh wait, I just checked. It's actually $500 billion now. It just went down.
It just went down.
No, so it's there is a huge percentage of this that is real estate. It doesn't give a breakdown, but it does specifically talk about how a lot of it is built up in real estate specifically, and how that in some sense is like the icing on the cake. Like, yeah, the parents have savings, they've worked hard their lives, they've they've been frugal, they've saved, and then they might have some investments, and then they also have their house, by the way, which is paid off and has gone from $100,000 to like 2 million or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they specifically picked examples of like downtown Toronto and downtown Vancouver, where like the delta between when these boomers bought their house and now is just like astronomical, right? They didn't go to like Saskatchewan and like, you bought it for 40 grand and now it's worth 50 grand.
So I'm asking about like, what is it? Because really this is the result of government spending and inflationary policy, right? If it's real estate and if it's stocks, like both real estate and the stock market are driven, I would say, almost exclusively by government spending, right? And we've again talked about this lots, how inflationary policy leads to asset price increases, and so that's where all this wealth came from. And it's just kind of interesting. We're seeing that now, but it's not necessarily like these Canadians that socked away like. They worked hard and they put their money away, but some of the outsized growth you're seeing, like especially in real estate, is it's not, it had nothing to do with them really.
When you say outsized growth, that's what the article, I think the reason why they wrote the article is because they call it the inequality crisis, right? there's an outsized growth. Like there's one group, the boomers, that have more than they should, right? Because they were beneficiary, they were lucky, right? The article constantly says lucky. They got into this at a time when things were low, and now it's high, and so like
but is
it their ingenuity that they bought a house and lived? Well, not really. So what did they do to earn this, right? And now compare that with their children or the people in this generation coming up who are, they might have the same work ethic, or they might think they do, and they can't get a house, or, they won't be in the same spot unless their parents help them, right?
Yeah. So,
and that growing inequality is becoming a crisis, Mark.
Yes, the inequality. So I'll let you continue in a minute, but no, it's the way it's framed that really sets me off. That's what really gets me going, right? Like, and I would agree. They were kind of lucky. I mean, how much of it is luck and how much is not? But they were fortunate in that, they bought a house for $50,000 and now it's worth $1 million or $1.5 million, and they would not have foreseen that happening. They would have, I think it's always sort of been the Canadian dream that you buy a house, you pay it off, and that's like kind of for your retirement, right? You can live there, and then eventually you can sell it, and and it will go up in value. They didn't foresee perhaps to this level. But it's not, what about the people who didn't scrimp and save and work hard and buy a house? Because guess what? They still had to work hard in order to buy a house. It wasn't handed to them. Yeah. They still had to put a down payment down and like pay it off and do all
to
the
make
stuff,
a choice
right?
to do it, right?
And so as a result of government policies, now it's worth a whole bunch of money. But number one, they can't do anything with that money. It's not money. It's just a house, and they could remortgage it, sure, but then they'd have to make payments. Or they could sell it and move somewhere. But it just rubs me the wrong way when we talk about this inequality. Because, again, we've talked about it before, how it's obviously these boomers did something to kind of to put one over on other people, right? If they're rich,
they must have taken.
They're the reason that these young people are poor, because they took all the money. Yeah. And it's like, no, the reason for both is government spending. The reason that their home has gone up so far in value, or their stock portfolio, is government spending. The reason young people can't afford anything is government spending, unbridled government spending. It's the problem behind all of this. And like, nobody ever gets that with these articles, right? And this, I haven't read the Maclean's article, but I'm sure
the whole article, there does no mention of government or spending.
Exactly. And so, like, what is? I read before, Maclean's is something like a 5th grade reading level.
Okay, yeah. I would suspect
it's probably
most,
come down from there. That was a while ago when I heard that. But anyways, carry on. I just want to kind of reframe the argument. That's why it made so much sense
to me.
That's why you can understand it.
Well, okay, listen to this. So they're comparing where we're headed with the Victorian era, where your destiny in life was based on your inheritance, right? Like if your father owned land and he had a big whatever estate, he could pass it down. And now if you don't, like, you have to marry into that family, or you have to murder somebody or whatever to secure your future. Like,
I mean, they had a lot of good murder mysteries in the Victorian era.
So,
and I think they're a little bit off with the Victorian era, because that was Industrial Revolution, the start of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And huge wealth increases for everybody. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, so
Maclean's.
I just think this is important because we talked about it briefly before with Generation Squeeze, and they mentioned that
the wealth transfer.
Well, they mentioned that organization in this article, and then another think tank or whatever, and it's just like, hey, this is an interesting theme that's trying to be put out there in the general public, that hey, there is inequality in wealth, and this is causing it, and it's because, and there's going to be this big wealth transfer, and if there is, like, it's because this,
Well, this is our chance to make things right.
Yeah, and resolve the situation. And so, one of the things they suggested, I guess, was like proposals on taxing wealth.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess you could tax wealth in a myriad of different ways, but taxing, your principal residence, right? And you have a principal residence tax exemption. That's a big thing, right? But if you don't, or if all of a sudden you've banked on your whole life having one, and then you get to your retirement, it's like, nope, sorry, you don't. Then.
So just to be clear, they want to tax this wealth. So the wealth that was funded by dollars that were taxed already.
Yeah.
Because presumably somebody was working, they made money, they paid income tax, and they paid, sales tax and fuel tax and, carbon tax now.
I gotta run this quote by you. So this is Miles Korak. He's a Canadian economist and professor of economics at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, who studies intergenerational mobility. Right?
Okay.
So people going through the generations.
Is that like rock climbing?
I don't know how you go up
the
through
ages?
an age, because you can't really change an age, but I guess it just means social status and your mobility in your social status. Like, Mark, if I gave you lots of money and then your kids screw up poor, what did that mean? You probably just wasted all the money. Okay.
That sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But go on.
His quote is, when wealth gets passed on to the next generation, it inherently rubs against our sense of fairness. After all, what did you do to be born into a rich family? Asked Korak. And so some Canadians might begin to wonder about the degree to which equality of opportunity really exists.
No, it doesn't. You know what? No, I'll just say that. Let's get this guy. Gideon, book this guy on the show.
We're going to get
Make
him
sure he's
on the
got
show.
clown makeup on. No, it doesn't rub against our sense of fairness. This is what everybody strives for. Unless you're a complete deadbeat or you don't care about your children, do you not work hard so that you have something to leave to your children?
And that's biblical, right?
Yeah.
That is, the wise. I should have a quote about that.
Yeah, what is it? The wise man leaves. I can't remember. I'll have to look that up. But no, but who does not want to provide something for their kids when they go?
No,
right? I think that's normal, natural, and not sinful behavior. Right? I want to make life better for my kids. I don't want to spoil them, and we talk about that. I don't want them to have everything on a silver platter.
When he says it, when you see wealth going down from one generation to the next, it rubs against your sense of fairness, and you get annoyed by that.
No, it doesn't.
It's none of your business.
Okay, yes, if you believe in private property.
It's not yours. That's actually rubbing your sense of envy.
Yeah, and that's okay. So that's what I wanted to say. This is pure jealousy.
Yeah, you're making a whole career out of studying and becoming envious.
And this is the basis for all of this, the DEI, the Marxist thought, the Black Lives Matter, all of this stuff. The basis for it is jealousy. Yeah. Pure jealousy. It is not out of a sense of fairness or equality or whatever. It is out and out jealousy. If I see somebody passing down money to their children, I'm not jealous. Maybe I'm a little bit jealous, right? I want a jet ski. Yeah. But to me, that's hey, I want to do that. I want to be able to have something to like a legacy to hand off to my kids. Yeah, and again, I don't want to spoil them, but if life is so tough and so hard, I want to give them a good start.
Yeah.
That's why we send them to the school that we do. That's why we, get piano lessons or, okay, listen, I read an article. No, not McLean's, even worse. But saw a headline.
These magazines that you sit in front of the toilet and read.
No, okay. I wouldn't. There's only one reason I would have McLean's in the bathroom, and that's if we're out of toilet paper. But so I'm being a little hard on McLean's, but let's just say traditional media. No, but the article was, if you read to your children at bedtime, you're contributing to inequality. Right, and that's the idea.
This? Did you read it to your kids at bedtime?
No, I didn't. We're not at that stage yet. Maybe the older one. But no, but that's the idea, right? Let's drag everybody down. Don't try and do better for your children. And this, we talk about the house, building a household, building that little bastion, that, rock against the stormy sea, whatever metaphor you want to use. Yeah. Right. And you're going to do everything you can to prepare your children for this
resources.
world. give them a leg up. This is what normal parents should want. Not, well, I'm not going to read to my kids because that's, it's not fair to
the other parents don't read to their kids.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'm not going to leave anything to my children. Or it's not even necessarily about leaving something to them, but I'm not going to do anything to, like, what? Who does that? Who in their right mind?
Yeah.
Even animals, right? They give their babies the best start, and some of them leave them later, and some of them leave them sooner.
Yeah.
But generally, they provide for them and give them a good start in somewhere, and that's what we should be doing.
Half the people doing this have kids, but anyways.
Well, that's part of the problem.
The quote from Proverbs is, "A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous." I think we might be taking that a little bit out of context, because there's probably there's a lot more in terms of the spiritual elements in there. But I guess if you read a surface reading of that, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. Well, can you say that they're all good people?
I think it often would go hand in hand, right? If you're trying to leave us, that's the most important thing you can leave, is a spiritual legacy.
Yeah.
But that has real world behavioral implications, right? That means I want my kids to see me working hard, right? I don't want them to necessarily see me just like living it up or being lazy.
Yeah.
Or
that's the other one. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty.
So what does that mean for the podcast?
Yeah.
We leading to poverty?
We're looking for sponsors. Yeah.
No, but I think the one kind of follows the other, right? If you're setting a good spiritual foundation for your kids, you're going to give them other practical disciplines, like discipline in itself, right?
Yeah. I gotta keep reviewing you quotes on this article.
Okay.
The boomers' tight grip on property is a key piece of our inequality crisis.
We need a blood pressure monitor just to see it.
Can't these boomers, these are human beings who bought a house a long time ago, but somehow they're the enemy because they have a tight grip on the property.
Grip.
They live in it for 50 years.
They take care of it. They beautify it. What evil people
they
are.
Pay their property taxes. Man, that's a key piece of the inequality crisis. So they need to loosen that grip.
But again, when you frame everything as oppressor oppressed, right, or a victimhood mentality, then this makes sense.
So here's one thing that is true. So a statement was made by this is a political economist. So it's wages don't buy houses, houses buy more houses. So that's true, right? So and we've dealt with that when we're talking about young people buying a house, or even just people who have a number of properties and have kind of come to the limit of investing, kind of using conventional financing. Yeah. Your wages at a certain point run out, right? And you need equity. You need some sort of other pot to pull from, right?
Well, what were the...
I don't even have the stats on how many people use their parents to help them fund their purchases, but I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, as it should be. Why wouldn't you help your kids, right? But I don't know if you still have the chart up, the number of uninsured versus insured mortgages, and how there's been a huge increase in uninsured mortgages. And so, just to break that down for a second, right? If most insured mortgages are for first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
Right? This is when you're putting down less than 20% of the purchase price of the property. You would go to, in Canada, you go to CMHC or Genworth, I think, usually CMHC. And, it is through CMHC and they have insurers. But anyways, you go to them and you can put 5% down because you're a first-time home buyer, you don't have a lot of money, you're getting into your first home. And then how it has generally worked is you build up equity in that home. And then when you buy your next home, usually you're at a point where you're putting more than 5% down because you've built up equity in your home.
Yeah.
And again, because of government spending. And, you've also paid down your mortgage as well, right? So there's that too. But so anybody buying sort of their second home or an additional property, right? So they have their first home that they live in and then they get another one. Those are all uninsured purchases. And so that has climbed quite a bit. And you can look at that and say, why is that? Well, it's because probably fewer first-time home buyers are able to afford homes. So that means homes that are being bought are by people are by investors. And so they're able to take money out of an investment property and put that down on another one, right? So as unaffordability continues, as house prices rise, well, now I can take a bigger chunk out of my investment property because the price went up so much, and I can go buy another one.
Yeah.
Whereas the first-time home buyer, they're not in the game, so they don't have that rising equity to help them, right? So it's just like, it makes sense, right? So you can look at it as predatory investors are buying up all the homes, which has been the headline, or it's just like, no, this is the natural way of the stock market because the government won't stop spending money. Anyway, so that's the insured versus uninsured mortgages rant.
I'm sure that makes sense, but I kind of a little bit lost you. But that was partly because I was reading some other funny things.
Okay, let's hear them.
Oh, 1 second here. Have you heard the word vibecession?
Don't even. I will just get up and walk out this door.
Okay.
Vibes. Let's hear it, Brent.
No, so we'll just put that aside for a minute. But no, so that is when somebody feels that there's, I don't know, somebody feels there's a recession even though there's not. I don't know. Like,
okay, so it's the vibe.
Yeah.
The vibes.
There's actually a word for this. I don't know. They like to make new words up.
Yeah.
For these. Yeah. I guess one thing that came out was, okay, so I'm going to read this. How hard is it to know where anyone stands financially, or to recognize what real achievement looks like when invisible wealth is altering one's place in society? So this is a comment coming from a person who lives downtown in a big city, Toronto, and in a nice neighborhood, and they see these like young couple move in, and they have a kid, and they buy like a $2 million house, and they're sitting by their pool all day, and it's like, how can you afford this? Right?
Right.
And what they're saying is like, is there really a middle class, or is it just the parents of the people are the rich people creating this false middle class feeling? And it's like the markers of a comfortable middle class life, being able to afford a family vacation or buy a home, appear to exist, but do they actually? It sounds like a tree falls in the forest type cone. If the family lounging poolside on their vacay couldn't pay to be there themselves, is there even a middle class? And I think this is something that, we've been talking about for a while, is the destruction of the middle class. But like, they're coming at it from such a weird angle.
It's such a weird. What are they spying at? Like, are they like looking in people's backyards? What?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess. You see that people laying down by their pool? I don't think they can really afford to be laying by that pool.
Yeah, I don't know what to. I don't know what to tell this guy. Like, again, it just seems to me to be coming from the jealousy angle.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at these people. Like, well, how did they? Surely they couldn't have actually like gone through medical school and now
there must be
have
some
a
element of
practice.
truth to that, because like if you're living in a really, really rich neighborhood and there's all these young couples moving in, and they like one of them works or what, I don't know, and then their parents just pay for them to do all these things.
Well, how do you know though?
I don't know.
It's just speculation and it's dumb, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know, I guess you could assume that their parents help
ask
them.
the one person, but
Yeah, ask the person
But
that's
if you
at
think
home.
about it, like, how could a young person be able to afford that? Like,
I don't know. They could make a lot of money
and make a lot
They
of
could
money.
be a business owner. They could be. Well, I've seen. I've had clients.
Yeah.
Who were who were doctors.
Yeah.
And like, if I looked at them, I'm like, what are you, like 20 years old? No, they're actually like 30.
Yeah.
And they've gone through med school and they've gone through residency, all that stuff, and now they have their own practice and they're doing like quite well, so they can afford the payments on this really nice house. Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to write an article and be like, how can they afford this?
Is the middle class real?
Yeah, like,
So-
I would agree. The middle class is middle class. The middle class
It's
is
about to be a middle class.
yeah, is being destroyed. But I'm not looking at it from the angle of like, oh, how can they afford that? I don't really care.
But you can see what they do in this article is to constantly tilt people towards envy and towards suspicion, And that's the vibecession I'm getting from this whole thing. It's just
Okay, go back to vibecession.
okay.
Now.
I don't even know what that means, man. I saw it. I was like, Mark's gonna have fun with this. I don't know what it means.
Well, because the vibe that people have is that we're in a recession.
Yeah.
But it's not really a recession, right?
Well, it was actually coined by somebody. What is a vibecession, and are we in one?
Okay.
It was coined by Kyla Scanlon. So good for her, I guess. Yeah.
Kyla. That's a millennial name if I ever heard one.
You're just throwing everybody under the bus. The vibes of a recession, but maybe not the economic reality of one yet.
Okay, yeah. So this is... Okay, here's a term favorite term, gaslighting. This is the government gaslighting people saying like, no, things aren't that bad.
Well, explain to people what
you
gaslighting is.
You can only afford dog food for dinner, but like stop complaining. Things are really good. And I've seen a number of interviews by liberal ministers in the liberal government saying like, no, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? No, we're actually like, we're the envy of other countries. And I'm just like, who are you? Who do you think you're fooling? You're not fooling anybody. Certainly not the
countries.
we're the envy of Bangladesh. Like, yes, sorry, Bangladesh. No, they're talking about because they have some cherry-picked statistics saying that we are poised for the fastest economic growth in the OECD, or the second fastest in the next couple of years. It's like, yeah, when you're starting from negative $1 billion and like you move up a little bit, yeah, that's fast growth. You're still poor. You still in bad shape.
They should make you like the ambassador for Canada.
Okay, Pierre Poilievre, if you're listening to this, put me in charge of international relations. I promise it'll go well. Gaslighting is when you like use
psychological tricks to try and get somebody to question their own sanity.
Yeah, you kind of turn the tables on them and be like, yeah.
Is it real?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that what the devil did in the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to use it's gaslighting.
Is it really?
Is that really how it is?
Yeah.
You know?
Are you sure?
Really, it's your fault.
Yeah.
And that's like a classic part of gaslighting is like...
You put it onto the other person.
It's actually your fault.
Yeah.
This problem that you had.
It's sinister and it's evil.
And it was used originally by sort of the left, if we can call it that, when people were pushing back against like... equal opportunity, DEI, all this stuff, right? They're saying, oh, you're gaslighting. When people pointed out like obvious errors and fallacies in their logic and like, no, maybe if you want to do better, you just got to work hard and not wait for someone to hand you stuff. They're like, oh, you're gaslighting. You're making this their fault.
Yeah.
These people who don't want to work. And anyway, so, I mean, we are now in the age of the gaslighting.
Yeah, where we have vibecessions every few. You got a vibecession going on your phone, man.
Oh yeah, is it?
It's getting a vibecession.
But I thought that was kind of clever, right? You had the Enlightenment,
yeah,
and now you have the Gaslightenment. I
wish
I made that up. That? No, I didn't. I wish I did, but okay. What else you got about this? I got a whole bunch of things I want to complain about, Brent. What else you got with this Jackpot Generation?
I don't know. I just keep coming back to this idea that people deserve to have wealth versus like, I think our Christian perspective is just like, we don't deserve anything, right? Like, you can't envy other people. You don't deserve it. Like, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way, the whole article, but
you still read the whole thing.
Yeah. What else can I pull out for you? No, one of their solutions was laneway houses and intergenerational living, which I thought was interesting because they come to similar conclusions. Like, hey, the middle class is getting eroded. Their idea is because we don't even know if it's real because the current middle class is just living off of the wealth of the previous class. But we're saying it's actually unsound money being produced ad infinitum by the government and handed to the people that they prefer first, and the people who don't have assets, people who just save money, get the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
So that's the destruction of the middle class. And these people are saying, well, no, it's like, it's something completely different and unrelated. They didn't even mention money printing or any of this stuff, right?
Well, so here's my take on the middle class and the destruction of it, right? The middle class is not a class that has a ton of assets. We would say that's probably the wealthy.
Yeah.
They may be building assets, but they don't have a ton.
Like this is going back a few years, though. Like even now?
Well, even now,
Okay.
right? The primary feature, I think, of the middle class is their wage earning capability.
Yeah.
They have the ability to earn a very good wage. And that may be 2 very good wages in the case of like a family where the mother and father both work, or maybe it's one high wage earner. And, in the past, like what was middle class, right? If you were earning...
If you were a serf.
A serf? No, but I'm sorry, the more recent.
You could earn a bucket of potatoes.
The more recent, right?
The more recent. Okay.
If you were making, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, could you say you were middle class, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now that's gone.
Yeah.
If you're making that much, no, you're not in the middle class because you have no chance. Because there's also the ability to save and to build up assets.
Yeah.
Now that's subsistence living.
So
you have no chance of
middle class getting gutted, and there's a
the lower end of the middle class is falling out, and you have the upper end of the middle class, which is like we're talking about doctors and lawyers and stuff, right? Which people typically think of as wealthy, but like no, they are earning they earn a high wage, but unless they if they spend it all, well, they're still stuck in the middle class, and they will never be wealthy because they don't have any assets. So I just want to kind of clarify what I think the middle class is and like what the main feature of it and why it's disappearing because of inflation, because people's earnings are not keeping up to the cost of living. And that means middle class is disappearing.
All right. I'm not going to hurt your feelings on that one. We don't need any vibecessions going on here. But no, another thing the article talks about this Piketty guy, which have you ever heard Capital in the 21st Century is his book, Thomas Piketty. We got to do some more research. I feel like I've come across this book before, but it's 2013 it was written. French economist guy. Okay. Anyways, he proposes inheritance for all.
Oh, here we go. So we'll have to hear this one.
Where every citizen receives a minimal inheritance paid out at 25 years of age. This would be financed by a mix of progressive wealth and inheritance tax. I'm trying not to laugh. Aimed squarely at stripping away some of the generational privilege of the rentiers, families who live on investment income like property. So maybe we got to read his book or have him on the show. Good. We can get that guy in the pipeline so we can talk.
Do not get him, good. The only Piketty happening here is Piketty knows. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Sounds to me like more of the same, right?
Yeah, that kind of harkens back to UBI in my mind right away. Is inheritance for all. Like, how do you, whenever you hear these things like for everybody or everybody gets something for free or universal basic income, like where is this coming? Like,
yeah, nobody ever asked that, right? No. Everybody gets something. Okay, from where?
Yeah, where's the like everybody has to pay thing? Everybody has to, pay your everybody has to sacrifice this thing.
Like, everybody gets ice cream.
Yeah, everybody has to work hard thing.
Like even my kids know, like once in a while they'll get like ice cream, right? All right, everybody gets ice cream, but generally there's no ice cream in the freezer.
No.
There's no whatchamacallit, drumsticks. No, okay. I learned, and I stopped buying it so that I wouldn't eat it all.
Okay.
But the point is, like, if it's not there, they all can't get some.
Yeah.
Because and sometimes they'll say, "Oh, can we have ice cream?" And I'm like, "Go look in the freezer."
Yeah.
And knowing full well that there's nothing there.
Are they like kind of
and then they're like, "Oh, there is none." I'm like, well, I guess
to the freezer, just start scraping the edges of the ice off.
Yeah. No, but they look and they're like, "Oh, I guess we can't have any because there's none there." It's like, yeah, if there's none there, you can't have it. So where is this coming from?
Go get a paper route.
Okay, you know where it's coming from? Like, this is one thing I wanted to talk about. So the CRA has 40,000 employees. And I don't know if anybody has called the CRA lately or tried or like ask, talk to someone who has. It's your phone that's going, that's not mine. Yeah. Like terrible, terrible service. If you call the CRA, you're going to be on hold for like an hour, 2 hours. I've heard 3, 4, 5 hours, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get someone who does not speak very good English. They all probably speak French, though, so that's cool. Like, wow, for the, 90% of Canada that doesn't speak French.
Yeah, we're not against French-speaking people.
No, I'm not against it, but that's,
Just
sort of a
don't speak
requirement
French.
to get a government job. The IRS, and I asked you, how many people do you think work for the IRS?
Yeah.
Maybe this is a fun game you could play along at home, right? So CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, like our tax department, has 40,000 employees.
And we have 40 million people in Canada.
Yeah, give or take.
Well, like how many taxpayers, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways.
40 million people. IRS has 78,000 employees for probably, it's not quite 10 times now, but 8 or 9 times the amount of population. And, all things being equal, that should be 8 or 9 times the amount of taxpayers.
Not to mention the amount of money, amount of businesses, amount of...
Yeah. I mean, they're... And, so they are wealthier in the States, and we'll get to that with GDP numbers. But, like, what are they all doing? And we talked with this a bunch of episodes ago, and I listened to Joey and Len, Canadian Bitcoiners, and I think, like, of the same episode, we came to the same conclusion that government jobs are just a form of universal basic income. Right? You're taking useless people. I'm generalizing, but
it's just funny because
that's
Joey
what I do.
and Len are government employees.
Okay, we can't dox them.
Okay.
But no, we've talked about the vast increase in government employment in the last 10 years, not that it's related to anything. But I mean, honestly, it has been a growing trend in the 2000s. But it's heightened recently. But yeah, I mean, that's my theory is that, like, this is just a way of the government to provide.
Yeah, if you strip out
guaranteed
the
income
government
for people.
jobs, the jobs numbers look a lot different.
What's that?
If you strip out the government jobs,
Oh, yeah.
the jobs numbers look a lot different.
Well, and GDP looks a lot different without government spending, right?
But
So
we
anyways,
wouldn't know. Would we know what GDP is without all these employees calculating it?
Well, that's where it gets messy, right? Because then these people spend and buy, and that contributes to GDP. So yeah, without all this.
So wait, you're telling me in the
be much
States,
worse.
like if you called the IRS, you'd probably have to wait on hold for like 15 hours or so?
No.
No? Okay.
So I don't have anecdotal data from there. I mean, a lot of people don't
So if you're
want
a US
to call the
listener,
IRS, but
give us a shout. Tell us how long it takes to get a hold of somebody.
well, and even it is speculated that there is a ton of like overhead as well at all U.S. Government agencies, and they could fire 50% of the people without losing any kind of value or
So
service.
if you think about something like that, no matter what country it's in, like if you could lose half of the people and still run an effective organization, like what are these people actually doing?
Yeah,
Like-
that is a very well. So the classic case is Twitter.
They're just on Twitter.
Elon Musk, right?
Oh.
Where he fired 90% of the people at Twitter. Maybe it was 80%, right? And what happened?
Were they considered twits?
Yeah, they were. Anyways, nothing happened. Twitter's better than it used to be.
Yeah.
So what were they all doing, right?
Except for it's called X, and that's really confusing. But
Okay, other than that. So, I mean, and there's some simplifications there, I'm sure. But the point is that most big organizations, especially ones that have DEI departments, like there's so much waste and nonsense. And that's another reason I'm not crying for the universities at all. Like if they have to do some budget work and some belt tightening, like good.
yeah,
You should fire half of your administration at least, and kind of see where you stand after that, instead of getting fat off the off government funding. Anyway, so that's my take on UBI and government employment.
Really?
Government employment is basically UBI.
all right. What else you got, Mark? Unless you want me to go back to McLean's here. We can't
we
go
got to
for 45 minutes and
yeah, I
go
know.
back to like
45 minutes of rants.
I don't even want to mention this organization that's at the end of this, so I'm not even going to bring it up.
I'm sure you will, just
No,
to get
I'm
me
not
going.
gonna-
Okay, so related to this, Trevor Tomb, I'm sorry, Trevor. If
We
I'm
got to get
getting
him
your-
on the show, good?
Yeah. getting his name wrong, but he had an article out, and just like full credit to him, right? He wrote about the Great Divergence and just did some, calculations and looked at the divergence between Canada and the US in terms of GDP. So he's looking at real GDP per capita. So I should break that down, and using purchasing power parity. So I should break all that down before we actually look at the numbers. So GDP is gross domestic product, which measures, economic activity in a country. And you have real or nominal GDP. So real is the actual measurement of dollars that are being spent. Right. So real versus nominal interest rates, right? Yeah. So nominal is like what the posted interest rate is. Real is what you can actually get in the market. So real is what is actually happening in the economy. Per capita, that just means per person, right? Per amount of population.
Well, yeah, because if you look at the GDP of the U.S., you would suspect it'd be way larger than the GDP of Canada. That makes sense.
When
you divide it by the number of people,
and then you do per capita, we should be much closer, right? And then purchasing power parity, PPP, is a way of...
Is this like a long dad joke?
No, I wish it was. I should find a punchline for the end of it. Yeah. No, but you could say, but there's differences between Canada and the U.S., right? Like cost of living in the U.S., for example, is much less in most places, right? Maybe not New York and like Los Angeles, but in most places. So taking into account regional differences, that's what purchasing power parity does. So it figures out like, what's your, if you make X amount of dollars, you could make, let's say, $150,000 a year in San Francisco. And like you're middle class and you're actually not making a ton of money because it costs you $100,000 to live, to rent an apartment. Even though
you're making 3 times as much as somebody in...
Yeah. So what's your quality of life, right?
Right.
So it takes, like it adjusts for all of that stuff, right? And like if milk costs more here versus there, well, you take that into account. Okay. So those kinds of things. So that's purchasing power parity. So and it's not perfect, but it's really trying to do like apples to apples, not apples to mandarins or something, right?
Yeah. Or apples
and it's,
to French apples.
Exactly.
Le pomme. Is it le pomme or la pomme?
Le pomme.
I don't know.
It's a masculine fruit.
Okay.
Okay. So the gap has increased quite a bit, and there's always been a bit of a gap. Between real GDP, but he's done it since 1970. So, and I don't have, I should have shared this, but I don't have the, I don't have the stuff. So you'll just have to listen to me. So in 1970, real GDP per capita in Canada was something around 22,000, let's say, and about 25,000.
Yeah, 25,000
in the US. And then, so we've seen since 1990.
So when you say 20,000, that's dollars per person per year. So in
US dollars.
In US dollars. So in US dollars, the closest comparison you can get is like in Canada in 1970, there was maybe a divergence of like $4,000 per year per person. In the country.
Yep.
Of GDP, so like growth.
Well, and this is adjusted to 2015 dollars.
Okay, so not even.
So they're like, here's this one.
They just picked
standpoint.
But that's a good thing to pick a time when.
Yeah. Because that also takes now into account inflation.
Yeah.
So because it may have been actually less dollars, but in 2015 dollars it would have been.
So let's just talk about what we expect. Like from the 1970s onward, do we expect that? Like these countries are running parallel? Do we expect?
Yeah, like we're just north of the U.S. We do tons of trade with them. So our economies are very intertwined, right? By far our largest trading partner.
Yeah.
We have similar governments, similar values, less guns. I don't know what a gun does to GDP, but right. But I always thought like Canada, we had a higher standard of living.
Yeah.
Which should mean more GDP. In general, right? It's just a nicer place to live, friendlier.
Yeah. Do we have more resources, less resources, different resources?
I would say per capita, we probably have more resources than the U.S.
Yeah.
Like they're a resource-rich company for sure. but I think we have more just because of oil.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's right around 1990 we saw a bit of a spread, right? A market spread and then it kind of continued this is similar trajectory to 2008. There's a bit of a drop in both, and then since 2015 it's really started to be a big gap where Canada has pretty well been flat since 2015. And that's borne out by other numbers that we've seen that, our GDP, we're arguably worse off than we were in 2015.
Yeah.
Which is like really depressing.
Like people listening around like, why do we care if we're competing? We're not competing against the States here, Mark. Like, why do we care if we're like losing this race or something, right?
Because it just demonstrates. Yeah, and this is not envy, right? This is just to demonstrate like
where
are we,
Mark.
Right? So never mind the States, right? Just our GDP has not increased in 10 years.
We need to go there and talk to them and teach them some equality.
Yeah, no, but just without comparing to any other country, our GDP has not increased.
Yeah,
that's depressing. Our population's increased. We should be getting better, right? We should have a higher GDP, more industrialized, more AI, more tech, more everything. No, we have done poorly. But then when you look at the US, you see like it's a massive gap. So it's $22,000 a year. So, and the gist of the article is, if we continue on this by 2024, which is now, or 2025, I think, there will be a 50% gap between productivity in the US versus Canada. Like, that's staggering.
Yeah.
For one industrialized country to another, why is it so far and so bad? And I mean, I don't think you have to look that far to figure out why.
So we're going to reach out to Trevor and we're going to have him on the show.
I mean, no promises, but it would be good to talk about it. But it just shows you how poorly we are doing here, right? And
and I think like if it leveled off in 2015, okay, well, why did that happen? All these, but then also like that's 9 years. That's quite a long time where we're not actually increasing in GDP.
Yeah.
And when we talked to Jeff Booth, right, and his whole philosophy around, his book is The Price of Tomorrow. And he talks about technology, right? And technology makes our lives better. It increases our productivity. Right, it's a one-way street, right? It compounds on itself, right? So if you have one technology now, all of a sudden I have the wheel and you have the wheel because you saw my wheel, you just made your own, and now we both have wheels and we never won't.
Yeah, and then maybe somebody invents a bicycle.
Yeah, and
then somebody invents a cart.
Yeah, and it just compounds and compounds. So
but for the guy who has no wheel, he never can.
Yeah.
Carry more stuff.
So if you just look at the technology curves of everything that's happened over the last 9 years, even since 2015, right?
Yeah.
Like all of the different technologies that have kind of come through and become mainstream and changed people's lives. And then to think that our productivity in this country hasn't even budged.
So it's actually fallen.
Yeah.
Right? Well, no, if you take into account technology.
Yeah. But like, if you just think about that, it's like, what? Where is all this going? Like how?
So, I mean, one answer is what we've talked about. It's
like the U.S. Now I'm thinking about that. Like the U.S. should be on a dramatically different curve as well, right? It should be on like a straight up line, basically. If AI and whatever.
Well, I mean, they also have issues with the government sucking GDP dry, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, so part of it is what we talked about earlier. All of our capital. So in a capitalist society, you risk capital to increase it. And so how have we done that in Canada? Well, we've stifled business. We've stifled gas and oil exploration. So where could it go? I don't want to start a business. Previous episodes we've talked about this. I don't want to start a business because of red tape and high taxes. So I'm just going to invest in real estate. I don't want to do any more oil or gas exploration or lumber because of high taxes, because of difficult regulatory environments. So I'm just going to buy real estate. Yeah. It's all gone into real estate. Nothing into research and development. Not nothing, but very little into research and development.
Like Ben Rabideau's last report, and he gives us numbers right on this stuff. And business insolvencies and delinquencies are also both up Business lending is flat, right, year over year. So
Yep.
we can just see in the data that the banks are not lending, but like banks are not taking the risk to invest in businesses right now, right?
No.
So even if people were starting them, like it's hard to get funding.
Yeah.
And businesses are expected to they're expecting to cut jobs as well. So like you have all of these things starting
And so here's a good example of how, this is in real estate. So it's a miracle that real estate is still the preferred investment vehicle for a lot of people. But we looked at development charges, right? And there have been some noise on this as well. But essentially, development charges in Canada have gone up 10 times, like not 10%, like 1,000% since 2010. Development charges. So this is different levels of government, what they charge to build a home. And you were talking about this, right? You were looking at building.
We've personally been looking into this stuff for quite a while now because, you might have the question pop into your head. I wonder what it costs to do this. And then you message the city and you wait about 6 months. And then they say, oh, did you message us? We had a cyber attack. Okay, guys.
But you had a triplex?
So we're looking at a property that we can convert into 4 legal units. So it's in the right zoning, meets all the criteria. It looks like a great opportunity. Very nice rentable area. It would improve the property and the lot a lot.
Provide more housing.
Yeah, provide more housing. Okay. So it checks all those boxes. So we're I wonder what it will actually cost us to do this. And, we've done multiple projects. So we kind of have the construction numbers. We have some ideas on, the design and the upfront work there. Right. But we don't really have the development charges because every municipality is different. And they have Toronto, they completely waive them up to 5 units. But this is in Hamilton. And, so we asked them and they gave us a bit of a breakdown and if you do 3 units, it sounds like our fees are going to be waived. There'd be some minor, a couple $1,000s, but $95,000 if we had the 4th unit.
So 3 units, let's say $5,000.
Yeah.
4 units, $100,000.
Yeah. So $95,000 plus the building permit and all the other costs. You got to engineer this thing and you got to hire the right people to do all this stuff, right? And make sure it's good. And then you can get your permit. So you're whatever, 100, 120 grand into this thing before you even start building it.
But you're not going to, you'll just take that out of your bank account, right? And you wouldn't pass that on to eventually the buyer or the renter.
No. I would subsidize the tenant's rent to $500, $600. Come on. Right?
Oh man. So we've talked about more affordable housing and stuff and how the province and the federal government is pushing municipalities and they're okay, we'll do it. But here's an example of how they
so this just came up in the last couple of weeks and we're whoa, okay. And then some other stuff in Vaughan or I don't know.
Mike Moffat, I was looking at that. So full credit to him, but he looked at development charges. This 10x since 2021, that's 14 years, right? Crazy. But so
wait,
for
2021 is only 3 years.
Sorry, 2010.
2010.
2010 to 2024.
Okay.
So in Vaughan, you want to build a single family home. There's $190,000 of development charges. Now you can't tell me it costs $190,000 to get a sewer and a water line and stuff to a house, right? And
especially if it's in the right zoning and
right. And so there's all you have the school board fees, you have the municipality, you have the region, right? But $190,000, crazy, 160 for a townhouse, and then he actually calculated when you actually look at the real cost. Right, because then there's other tax. You got to pay HST on stuff as well, on top of this, and just the time it takes. It works out more to $230,000 rather than $190,000. So that's just to build a single family home. So if you look at why are house prices so high in Vaughan, They're like, what, $230,000 more than here? Yeah, that's why. Right into the government coffers, where it's going to be wasted on, some DEI program. Let's be honest. Half of it will be wasted. Yeah. Right? Not getting you services.
I'm pretty sure the province mandated that the development charges be dropped for anything under 3 units. I don't know. We're going to have somebody on to talk a little bit more about this too, to try and get some of the details. But
yeah, no, this is where we sit right now.
But yeah, that's, I don't know. You wonder why things aren't getting built and why the things that are getting built are expensive.
Yeah.
And why the people who are buying them are getting gifts from their parents and seeming like they're in the middle class, but they're actually just living this fake life.
It's clearly the greedy fat cat developers. And, there's a theme, right? So you talk about gaslighting, right? The government would have you believe that it's these fat cat developers who are getting rich. And they're making money. They should if they're building housing, but they're getting excessively rich off of the backs of all these people. Right? When really, no, it is the government. If you're a government employee, you have a gilded pension, right? You have a guaranteed pension. You work X amount of years. You have to, I don't know if you've seen the protests of the civil servants in Ottawa, because they're being mandated to go back to work. Do you have to be bilingual
to be a government employee?
I think they're going to drop that, but that has been a thing for a long time.
Everybody should just start learning.
Yeah, learn French.
Learning the language you don't know.
No, but you talk about people who have some security. Government pension, which actually I don't believe, but is viewed to be as secure as you can get, right? CPP, no. I just saw a chart from Lynn Alden about Social Security in the United States and how by 2035 they will not have enough funding. Their funding is going to drop off a cliff, and we can talk about that in another episode. But the same will happen to Canada, right? We can't fund our CPP, so please don't count on that if you're listening. But yeah, government pension is the gold standard, right? So you don't have to work for 30 years or something. You'll get your pension, and there are huge protests by civil servants, by people in the government, because they have to come back to work for 3 days a week, and crazy protests in Ottawa. That's another one you didn't see.
Were they maybe driving trucks?
No, they're just walking around and just losing their minds because they have to come back to the office 3 days a week instead of 2. It was
were they yelling prison?
No, you just read some of this stuff. Okay. You would believe that it's a prison. But anyways, this is gaslighting. This is the government telling you that all these other people are getting rich off of. No, it's the government and government employees getting rich off of things like development charges and tax and everything else that they're charging, right? It's the definition of gaslighting.
So I look at that as a real estate investor. I look at these fees and I'm just thinking okay, so all I hear is you need to build more houses because we don't have enough, because we're pumping in lots of people and we don't have enough houses. Okay. Government's not building houses. Private investors are doing that with their own money. Like you keep saying, right? Pulling their own capital, risking it, putting it into a property like this and hoping that, at the end of the day, it's something that's going to work, right? So there's a big risk there. So you do that, but this cost, okay, if that's the cost for me, that's the cost for everybody to do this. So is it going to get cheaper? Well, maybe, the province or the federal government, or I don't know, whoever can step in and say, hey guys, you have to waive these fees now, right? So that would be a change. Maybe in 2 years, they'll say, you know what? It's crisis time. We have to waive these fees.
Yeah.
And municipalities go, man, good thing we had them so high for so long because we got a bit of a runway. But if I got to pay them, everyone's got to pay them, right?
Yeah.
And that's just what a house will cost. That will make the housing...
Whether it's affordable housing or not.
Well, that'll make the housing more and more scarce and more rare and more expensive, right? It'll make the cost to live in that housing more expensive. The cost to own that housing more expensive. Right?
Every step they take.
And the people who work, the guys who landscape the house and the guys who supply the internet to the house and the guys who drop the mail, all these people live in a house themselves and they got to make more money just to, it's just going to make everything more expensive.
It's like a never-ending cycle of inflation.
I look at it kind of, maybe I'm just a bit jaded, but I'm just you know what? it is what it is. And, you know, if we pay it now, it's probably going to be cheaper than it ever is, unless they reduce the fees by some policy. So you weigh that risk and then you just say, look, let's do it now, because
government cannot reduce their spending.
No.
Right? They're handcuffed to it.
Yeah.
We're not going to see reduced government, even if
But I think it's
conservatives come into power.
Intra, where the one government can say to the other government, you do this because otherwise we won't get elected.
Yeah, but sure. But then they would have to follow that up with increased funding.
Yeah.
So this is why, even if conservatives get in, like, spending's not going to go down.
Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah.
You can't without causing a crisis.
So that means that the housing will be more expensive.
What they can do, and they just made an announcement, we've talked about the 30-year amortization.
Yeah. This is going to be a short episode, right?
Yeah, we're over an hour already.
Okay.
We'll wrap up soon. Just announced.
The second hour will be all the positive things.
The third hour, we're going to really get into some application. No, Government of Canada just announced that they are expanding the 30-year amortization program. So they announced it earlier this year. So a first-time home buyer buying a new home could qualify for a 30-year amortization for an insured mortgage. So, okay, great. We're like, great. That'll maybe help condo sales. But now they've expanded that to all home purchases, not just not just new homes, any home. And Gideon's over there like, I just bought a home. What the stupid government? Maybe it'll be retroactive.
He's listening to you too much.
You can, don't listen to us. No, well, look, to be fair, we've called this. We said longer amortizations are coming across the board. And this is just like the first step, right? We're going to see 40, 50-year amortizations. I won't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure about it, you know, in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So anyways, that 30-year amortization has been extended to all first-time home buyers, right? And yeah, I think this is just...
Whereas before it was 25, right?
Yeah, it was always 25.
So
well, not always. It's been
I think
longer.
that translates to what, like 10% of purchasing power? Like when you extend the amortization, your payments drop, so you get a little bit more buying power, right? If you can qualify up at the other, like you can qualify for more of a house.
Yeah, or with less of an income, you can qualify for the same house.
Yeah.
So, is it really helping people in the long run? Like, no, it just means you have debt for longer, but you know, if that's what you need to get into the market. And then they also increased the cap for insured mortgages. So before, if you were applying to CMHC for mortgage insurance, generally meaning you're a first-time home buyer, the cap was $1 million. So you couldn't buy a house. If you bought a house worth $1.1 million, you could no longer get CMHC insurance. And you would have to put down 20% rather than 5%.
Yeah.
So they've increased that cap to $1.5 million. So for all you first-time home, I mean, we laugh, but it's, if you're buying a home in Toronto, and it's your first home, and like maybe you're 30 or 35 years old,
that just
saved
like
up
the
a ton of
first-time
money.
home buyer program just sounds like it's for people buying like a $400,000 house, not a $1.5 million.
Yeah, not like it's $1.2 million our first home, right? Like people are turning over in their graves, I'm sure. Lots of opas and omas, but like what is this all? What's the picture we're painting here? The government has said this, right? They're not going to touch housing prices.
Yeah.
We had a correction since COVID, and that COVID was crazy and it's come back down, but and we're seeing rent start to drop in some places as a sort of lagging indicator of that. But like they are not going to touch housing prices. They want to get their hands on that, that $1 trillion jackpot.
So why, they want to get their hands on that. But then why do we see this Maclean's article about how, the next generation wants to take all this wealth?
Well, it's setting the stage, right?
Yeah.
For the fact that there's going to be a tax grab, and that's okay because it's in the name of equality.
Right.
So pay your share.
You are not entitled to your parents' wealth. You should give it to the government so that they can distribute it evenly to your peers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just finished reading Animal Farm, by the way.
I just read that too.
And
like a couple weeks ago.
I've never actually read the book, and
I had never either.
It seems so trite and predictable now, but like for being published in 1954 or whatever, it was like, yeah, wow, look at that, it's a playbook, and it's what we're seeing now, right? Like you just have these stages of like, no, that'll never happen, to like, oh, okay, it's if it did happen, it would be okay, to like, well, it's happening and it's actually good.
Yeah.
To where like, yeah, and if you oppose it, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing with this, the you know, like, no, we would never tax that, or, take that money to where like, well, maybe, it would be a good thing.
Your pension will always be there. Right?
Yeah.
We'll have Joey on to talk about pensions. I want to hear what Joey has to say about that.
So yeah, setting the stage for them to be able to tax it, which I think it's just dumb, because if you had any brains, you're just going to put that house or your stock portfolio or whatever into a trust where the government can't touch it, like a family trust, and boom, pass the money on that way. So, well, I mean, if you're listening, I don't know, if you're in this class, you're an older person and you got a home and you're thinking about estate planning and stuff, like go talk to an estate planning, like a lawyer, and like it's not that hard to do and doesn't cost that much. You can do a family trust or something. And, do you want to pay the government half of your estate, or let your kids decide? If the kids want to give it to the government, fine. They can write a check.
Yeah, and if you're young and looking for a career path, maybe pursue estate planning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. Got to watch out for the AI paralegals, but I think for the top tier lawyers, AI probably won't replace them for quite a while. So, I mean, anyways, yeah, I think the end result is we're saying the same thing here, Brent, is that don't see house prices decreasing in Canada much, if at all.
Not if the government can help it. So,
well, I mean, if it's caused by government spending, do we see government spending going down? No, it's only going up, and they're looking for different places for tax revenues. And this is a big one for them. So in the foreseeable future, it's still solid if you can actually afford a home. If you can afford the $90,000 development charge for that fourth unit.
I would just say I'll fund the build if anyone wants to fund the development charge. Like,
out of the goodness of their hearts, in the name of equality. All right. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap our current events / bad news episode.
Yeah. We'll have a few more guests on in the
next time, I think we've got Hervoye from Geopolitics and Empire. I am really looking forward to that one. And it'll be good. So
hopefully it'll be good, because
I let him talk,
you've had episodes
really
where like you're in the outdoors with like crickets in the background and wind blowing trees around. And
I'm a nature guy. What can I say, Brent? Oh man. All right. Well, thanks for sticking around this long, folks. And until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.